As we approach the 2024 presidential election, this has caused a major back and forth for many Americans as to who should be our next president and lead our country over the next 4 years. When Americans look at Joe Biden as a potential candidate, Americans will most likely base their judgment on how well they felt he did over the last 4 years of his current presidency. This has now created a two sides of a coin situation: those who believe Biden was an adequate leader and those who believe he was inadequate. Before my initial research, I was someone who personally always felt neutral towards Joe Biden, simply because I wasn't someone who was particularly paid attention or invested in the world of politics. However, in this presentation, I will share my research on both the pro side and the con side of the claim that Joe Biden's presidency has proven to Americans that he is an adequate leader. As I research the pros of Joe Biden's leadership, I see that in many ways he has accomplished a lot within our economy, such as his implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act, providing alternatives to allow women across America to receive access to reproductive health assistance, and tackling the climate agenda by prioritizing environmental justice. And to be more specific, I wanted to touch on his implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act. For example, according to Nicole Rapfolko and Emily Gee, they state, quote, by extending enhanced financial assistance, making premium tax credits newly available to more middle-class families, and improving the generosity of financial help for those who previously eligible, the uninsurance rate dropped to an all-time low of just 8%. Having affordable drug prices can make situations life or death for many Americans based on whether or not they can or can't afford them. The same can be applied if Americans don't have any sort of health coverage. Allowing access to more affordable health coverage and prescription drugs provides comfort and stability for the American people, which Biden was able to accomplish through his leadership. However, within my research for the pro side, I stumbled upon many cons for Joe Biden's leadership and how his leadership in many ways has compromised not only Americans, but the country as a whole. For instance, Joe Biden's response to border security and his changes to foreign policy. However, like the pro side, a specific con that I want to focus on was his approach to border security. For example, according to the Committee of Oversight, the committee states, quote, that President Biden is the first president to ever unsecure a border on purpose. The current administration's failure to enforce and uphold the laws was written by Congress are not just a matters of legal debate, but have led to unimaginable suffering and death for Americans and migrants alike. The reason this is such an issue is when you have an unsecured border with very lax border security, it has the potential to bring problems that bleed within the economy itself, such as the fentanyl epidemic and, or even more scary, the potential for criminals to make their way into the U.S. and causing harmful acts upon Americans. In conclusion, throughout my research, my biggest takeaway from all this is that we as a country, especially those who may not have an interest in politics like myself, should pay just a bit more attention as to what goes on not only within our government, as well as take the time to critically select the people that we vote to take that leadership role. As whether or not I change sides, I'd like to personally say I changed sides a bit because the way I see it is just because maybe one candidate isn't as much of an asshole or as malicious as a previous candidate once was on the surface, that doesn't mean that person is any more qualified or is what's best for the country. In the case of Joe Biden's presidency, he seems like someone who does want to stand by the country and advocate for progress and change, but based on his lack of comprehension and poor decision making, it has not only put the safety of Americans at risk, but also disrupted any sense of unity within not just the American people, but across the globe, as well as being fully aware of these consequences and still choosing to do very little about it. Because of this, he just simply does not have the capability to run this country for another 4 years.